The cathedral doors closed behind Elena Varelli with the finality of a prison gate. She wasn't walking toward forever. She was walking into a transaction. Her father's debts, her freedom, all of it sold to the man waiting at the altar. Dante Russo, the crime lord who owned half the city and feared nothing. Everyone said he was ruthless, cold, a man who took what he wanted without asking. But when his dark eyes met hers, something shifted, something she didn't expect. And in that moment, Elena realized her biggest mistake wasn't agreeing to marry him. It was believing she could survive him untouched. If you're hooked, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The organ music swelled through the vaulted cathedral, each note echoing off marble columns like a death knell. Elena Varelli kept her eyes fixed on the floor as she moved down the aisle, her hand trembling against her father's arm. The white dress felt like a costume. The flowers smelled too sweet, cloying, making her stomach turn. This wasn't a wedding. It was a surrender. "Keep your head up," her father whispered, his voice tight. "They're watching." They, the families, the businessmen, the politicians who pretended not to know what Dante Russo really did for a living. Everyone who mattered in this city had come to witness her sacrifice, dressed in their finest clothes and wearing their best poker faces. Elena lifted her chin. If she was going to be sold, she'd at least look them all in the eye while it happened. The man at the altar didn't move as she approached. Dante Russo stood with his hands clasped in front of him. His dark suit cut so perfectly it looked like armor. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe 35, with black hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, straight nose, eyes so dark they were almost black, and so focused on her she felt stripped bare under his gaze. He wasn't handsome in a soft way. There was nothing soft about him. But he was striking, magnetic. The kind of man who walked into a room and everyone else became background noise. Elena's father released her arm when they reached the steps. She felt the absence of his support immediately, her knees threatening to buckle. But she forced herself to take the final step up to the altar alone. Forced herself to meet Dante's eyes. Up close, she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint scar along his left temple, the way his mouth was set in a hard line, like he'd forgotten how to smile years ago. "Elena." His voice was low, rough, not unkind, but not warm either. "Mr. Russo." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Dante," he corrected. "We're about to be married. You should use my name." The priest cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Everyone in this room knew what this was. A business deal dressed up in white lace and flowers. Her father owed Dante money, more money than he could ever repay, and this was the payment. One daughter, barely 23, traded for debt forgiveness and protection. Elena barely heard the ceremony. The words washed over her like water, meaningless sounds that would chain her to this man for the rest of her life. When the priest asked if she took Dante to be her husband, she opened her mouth and the "I do" came out automatically, like her body knew there was no other answer. Dante's response was firmer, certain, like he actually meant it. The ring slid onto her finger, a heavy band of platinum with a diamond so large it felt obscene. Dante's hands were warm, his touch careful as he positioned it. Then the priest said the word she'd been dreading. "You may kiss the bride." Elena's breath caught. This was it. The moment he'd take what he'd bought. Dante stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. He was taller than her by nearly a foot, and broader, his shoulders blocking out the light from the stained glass windows. One hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with surprising gentleness. He leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "Relax," he murmured, so quietly only she could hear. "I'm not going to hurt you." Then his lips brushed hers. Brief, chaste, over before she could fully process it. When he pulled back, something flickered in his dark eyes, concern maybe, or calculation. But it was gone before she could identify it. The organ erupted into triumphant music. Dante took her hand and tucked it into the crook of his elbow, and they walked back down the aisle together as husband and wife. Elena felt like she was moving through a dream or a nightmare. She wasn't sure which. The reception was held in the cathedral's garden, under white tents strung with lights that looked like stars. Elena sat at the head table beside Dante, watching the guests eat and drink and pretend this was a normal celebration. Her father kept glancing at her from across the room, his expression guilty and relieved in equal measure. She hated him a little for that relief. "You should eat something." Dante's voice pulled her attention back. He gestured to her untouched plate. "It's going to be a long night." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." Not quite in order, but close. "You're pale." Elena picked up her fork mechanically, forcing herself to take a bite of something that tasted like cardboard in her mouth. Dante watched her for a moment, then returned his attention to the man talking to him, one of the city councilmen, praising the ceremony like he hadn't just witnessed a transaction. As the night wore on, Elena learned to read the patterns. Men approached Dante constantly, wanting a word, a favor, his attention. He gave it sparingly, his responses short and precise. When someone got too familiar, his expression would go cold, and they'd back off immediately. He was feared. That much was obvious. Even at his own wedding, people approached him like he might bite. Around 10, Dante stood and offered her his hand. "Time to go." Elena's stomach dropped. She knew what came next, the wedding night. Her hand shook as she placed it in his. They didn't speak during the drive. Dante's car was a sleek black sedan with windows tinted so dark she couldn't see out. A driver sat up front, silent and professional. Dante sat beside her in the back, his attention on his phone, typing out messages with quick, efficient movements. The mansion appeared suddenly as they rounded a curve, a sprawling estate set back from the road, surrounded by high walls and an iron gate that swung open automatically as they approached. The building itself was massive, all clean lines and modern glass, lit from within like a beacon. "Home," Dante said simply. "Prison," Elena thought. Inside the mansion was even more impressive. Marble floors, high ceilings, art that probably cost more than her father's house. Everything was pristine, perfectly arranged, like a museum. A woman in her 50s appeared from a side hallway, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. "Mr. Russo, Mrs. Russo." She nodded to each of them. "I'm Maria, the head housekeeper. I've prepared the main bedroom suite for you both." "Thank you, Maria." Dante's tone warmed slightly when he spoke to her. "This is Elena. She'll need anything she asks for." Maria's expression softened as she looked at Elena. "Of course, welcome, dear. If you need anything at all, just press the call button in your room." "Your room, not our room." Elena caught the distinction and filed it away. Dante led her upstairs down a long hallway lined with doors. He stopped at the last one and pushed it open, gesturing for her to enter first. The bedroom was enormous. A king-size bed dominated one wall, covered in dark gray linens that looked impossibly soft. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the grounds, currently showing nothing but darkness and the glow of exterior lights. There was a seating area with a couch and chairs, a fireplace, even a small bar in the corner, and 2 doors on opposite sides of the room. "That one's the bathroom," Dante said, pointing to the left. "The other is a walk-in closet." Escalating. "Maria had some clothes brought in for you, basics until we can get you properly outfitted. Your things from your father's house will be delivered tomorrow." Elena nodded mutely, her throat tight. Dante walked to the windows, his back to her. "I know what you're thinking," he said quietly. "What you're afraid of." She waited, her heart hammering. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "This marriage is legal and binding. You are my wife, and that means something in my world. You have my name and my protection. No one will touch you. No one will threaten you. Anyone who tries will answer to me." "Okay," Elena whispered, "but I want to be clear about something." He took a step closer, holding her gaze. "I will never force you into anything you don't want. I will never touch you without your explicit consent. This marriage may not be what either of us would have chosen, but I'm not a monster." Elena blinked, surprise cutting through her fear. "You're not?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "No, though I understand why you might think otherwise." "Then why did you agree to this?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You could have just taken the money from my father, or something else. Why marriage?" Dante was quiet for a long moment. "Your father had nothing left to take," he said finally. and I needed a wife. Why? That's not your concern. His tone went flat, shutting down that line of questioning. The point is, we're married now. We'll make the best of it. I'll stay out of your way as much as possible. You have free run of the house and grounds, though I'd prefer you don't leave without security. My enemies are numerous, and you're a target now, whether you like it or not. And at night? Elena forced herself to ask. I have a suite on the other side of the house, Dante said. You'll sleep here alone. When we need to appear together publicly, we will. Otherwise, you won't see much of me. Relief flooded through her so strongly her knees went weak. Thank you. Don't thank me for basic decency. He moved toward the door, then paused. There's one more thing. In a week, we're hosting a dinner party. Important people. You'll need to play the role of devoted wife convincingly. Can you do that? Yes. She'd played roles her whole life. What was one more? Good. He opened the door. Good night, Elena. Good night. The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Elena was alone. She stood frozen for several minutes, half expecting him to come back. When he didn't, she finally moved, peeling off the wedding dress with shaking hands and leaving it in a heap on the floor. The closet did indeed have clothes, simple things, jeans and shirts and dresses, all in her size. She pulled on a soft t-shirt and pajama pants, then crawled into the massive bed. It was comfortable. Too comfortable. Everything about this place was perfect in a way that felt wrong. Elena stared at the ceiling, exhaustion pulling at her but sleep refusing to come. Today she'd become Mrs. Dante Russo, wife to a crime lord, prisoner in a golden cage. But at least he'd promised not to hurt her. That was something. Maybe the only thing. She just had to survive long enough to figure out if he was telling the truth. The next morning, Elena woke to sunlight streaming through windows she'd forgotten to cover. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the wedding, the mansion, Dante's dark eyes, and unexpected promise. She sat up slowly, taking in the room in daylight. Everything was expensive, tasteful, perfectly coordinated. A prison, but a beautiful one. There was a knock at the door. Mrs. Russo? Maria's voice, gentle. I've brought breakfast. Come in, Elena called, pulling the covers up higher. Maria entered with a tray laden with food, eggs, toast, fruit, coffee. Good morning, dear. I hope you slept well. I did, thank you. A lie, but a polite one. Maria set the tray on the small table near the windows. Mr. Russo asked me to tell you he's in his office this morning, but you're welcome anywhere in the house. There's a gym on the lower level, a library on the second floor, and the pool is heated if you'd like to swim. That's very kind. Also, a stylist will be coming this afternoon to take your measurements. Mr. Russo wants to make sure you have everything you need. Maria hesitated, then added more quietly, He's not as bad as people say, you know. He's fair, loyal to those who are loyal to him. Elena wasn't sure how to respond to that. Thank you, Maria. Left alone with breakfast she didn't want, Elena forced herself to eat. Then she showered in the massive bathroom, all marble and glass, with a shower that had more settings than she could count, and dressed in jeans and a simple sweater from the closet. Time to explore her cage. The mansion was a maze of hallways and rooms, each more impressive than the last. She found the library Maria had mentioned, a 2-story room lined with books, with leather chairs and a ladder on rails for reaching the higher shelves. The gym was state-of-the-art, equipped with machines she didn't know how to use. The pool was in a glass-enclosed room that made it feel like you were swimming outdoors. But the most interesting discovery was Dante's office. She didn't mean to find it. She'd just been wandering, opening doors, when she pushed one open and found herself looking into a large room with dark wood paneling and a massive desk. Dante sat behind it, his attention on a computer screen, dressed in a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up. There was a gun on the desk beside his keyboard. He looked up when the door opened. For a moment, surprise crossed his face, like he'd forgotten she existed. Then it smoothed back into that neutral mask. Elena. He didn't sound angry, just careful. Can I help you with something? I was just exploring. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you. You're not disturbing me. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Are you settling in all right? Yes. The house is beautiful. It's yours now, too. He gestured to the room. You can go anywhere except this office when I'm working. I need privacy for business matters. I'm sure you understand. Of course. An awkward silence fell. Elena was about to excuse herself when Dante spoke again. Have you eaten? Maria brought breakfast. Good. He paused, seeming to search for words. If you need anything at all, just ask. Maria or any of the staff can help. Thank you. Another silence. Then Dante's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his jaw tightening. I need to take this. Excuse me. Elena slipped out, closing the door behind her. As she walked away, she could hear his voice, low and sharp, speaking in rapid Italian. She spent the rest of the morning in the library, losing herself in books. It was easier than thinking about her situation. Around noon, Maria found her and announced lunch would be served on the terrace. Elena expected to eat alone, but Dante appeared as she was sitting down. He changed into different clothes, dark slacks and a gray shirt, and looked less intimidating somehow. Still powerful, still dangerous, but marginally more human. Mind if I join you? He asked, like she could say no. Please. They ate in silence for several minutes. Elena snuck glances at him, trying to understand who this man really was. His table manners were impeccable. He ate efficiently, not savoring the food but not rushing either. Everything he did seemed calculated, controlled. You don't have to be afraid of me, he said suddenly, not looking up from his plate. Elena's fork clattered against her plate. I'm not afraid. You are. Now he did look at her, those dark eyes seeing too much. I can tell. You barely breathe when I'm in the room. She couldn't deny it, so she said nothing. Dante set down his fork. Let me make something clear. I need this marriage to work, at least publicly. That means we need to be able to exist in the same space without you looking like you're about to bolt. So I'm going to ask you directly, what do you need from me to feel more comfortable? The question surprised her. I don't know. Think about it, because we have that dinner party in a few days, and I need you to be able to stand next to me and smile without flinching every time I move. I don't flinch, Elena protested. You do. But his tone wasn't cruel. It's subtle, but it's there. I'm not blaming you. I know what people say about me. But for this to work, you need to trust that I meant what I said last night. I won't hurt you. Elena met his gaze, searching for deception and finding only calm certainty. Okay, she said quietly. I'll try. That's all I ask. He picked up his fork again. Now eat. You still look too pale. The stylist arrived that afternoon, along with 2 assistants carrying garment bags and sample books. Elena spent 2 hours being measured and consulted on styles, colors, occasions. It was overwhelming, but also strangely exciting. She'd never had money for nice clothes before. Dante appeared halfway through, leaning in the doorway of the sitting room where the fitting was taking place. How's it going? The lead stylist, a thin woman named Giselle, turned with a bright smile. Wonderfully. Your wife has an excellent eye. She'll look stunning in everything we've selected. I'm sure she will. Dante's gaze moved to Elena, lingering for a moment. Make sure she has options for the dinner party. Something that makes a statement. Already planned, Giselle assured him. Red, I think, to match that beautiful ring. After they left, Elena found herself alone again. She wandered through the house, feeling restless and trapped despite the massive space. Eventually, she ended up back in the library, curled up in one of the leather chairs with a novel she wasn't really reading. That's where Dante found her an hour later. There you are. He stood in the doorway, jacket off, looking tired. Dinner's ready. I'm not really hungry. Eat anyway. The same command as last night. He walked further into the room, studying the bookshelves. You like to read? When I can. These are all yours now. Take whatever you want. He pulled a book down randomly, flipped through it, put it back. I don't have much time for fiction anymore. What do you read? Military strategy, economics, history. He shrugged. Useful things. Fiction can be useful too, Elena said quietly. It teaches you about people, how they think, what they want. Dante looked at her with something that might have been surprise. That's true. I hadn't thought of it that way. They ate dinner together in the formal dining room, a space so large their voices echoed slightly. The food was excellent, but Elena barely tasted it. She was too aware of Dante across the table, his presence dominating the space even in silence. "Tell me about yourself," he said halfway through the meal. "What do you want to know?" "Anything. Everything. If we're going to convince people this marriage is real, I should know more than your name and your father's debts." "Fair point." Elena set down her fork. "What do you want to know? What were you doing before the wedding? School? Work?" "I was finishing my degree. English literature. I wanted to teach, maybe." "Wanted?" He caught the past tense. "You can still do that." "Can I?" She couldn't keep the bitterness out completely. "I'm the wife of a crime lord now. I doubt any school would hire me." Dante was quiet for a moment. "Point taken. But you could tutor privately. Or write. You have the time and resources now." "I suppose." "What else? Hobbies? Interests?" "Reading, obviously. I used to paint, but I haven't in a while. I like cooking, though I'm not very good at it." "Maria would teach you if you asked. She loves cooking." The conversation continued, stilted but not hostile. Dante asked questions. Elena answered. She learned he was 36, had built his empire from nothing, and had no siblings. His parents were dead. He didn't elaborate on how. He collected art but claimed not to understand it. He spoke 4 languages fluently. Everything he said felt carefully curated, revealing nothing real beneath the surface. When dinner ended, Dante stood. "I have work to do. I'll be in my office if you need anything." "At this hour?" "I don't sleep much." He started to leave, then paused. "Thank you for dinner, for trying." "You're welcome." Elena watched him go, then retreated to her bedroom. The massive space felt less intimidating now, more like a sanctuary. She changed into pajamas and climbed into bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. As she drifted off, she thought about Dante's words. "I'm not a monster." Maybe he wasn't, but he was dangerous, and she was tied to him now, for better or worse. She just had to figure out which it would be. The next 3 days fell into a pattern. Elena would wake up, have breakfast, explore the house, or read. Dante would appear for lunch and sometimes dinner, making small talk that gradually became less forced. He was trying, she realized, trying to make this bearable for her. It should have been comforting. Instead, it made her wary. Men like Dante didn't do things without reason. What did he really want from this marriage? The answer came on the 4th day, when Maria informed her that Dante wanted to see her in his office. Elena's stomach clenched as she walked down the hallway. She knocked on the door, waiting for permission before entering. Dante sat behind his desk, but he stood when she came in. "Elena, thank you for coming. Sit, please." She took one of the chairs across from his desk, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "The dinner party is tomorrow night," Dante began. "I wanted to go over a few things with you first. The guests will include some very important people, business associates, politicians, other families. They'll all be watching us, looking for weakness." "Okay." "I need you to appear confident, comfortable, like this marriage is exactly what you wanted." He paused. "Can you do that?" "I'll try." "I know it's a lot to ask." His tone softened slightly. "But it's important. There are people who would love to see me fail, and a shaky marriage would give them ammunition." "I understand." Dante studied her for a long moment. "You know, you're handling this better than I expected. Most people in your situation would still be hysterical." "Being hysterical wouldn't change anything." "No," he agreed. "It wouldn't. But it would be understandable." He stood, moving around the desk to perch on the edge of it, closer to her now. "I want you to know, Elena, what I said on our wedding night still stands. This doesn't have to be more than a business arrangement. I won't push you for anything you're not ready to give." Elena looked up at him, searching his face. "Why are you being so decent about this?" "Because forcing you into something you don't want would make me exactly what people say I am." His voice went hard. "I've done plenty of terrible things in my life. I won't add that to the list." Something in his tone made her believe him. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." He moved back to his chair, creating distance again. "Tomorrow night will be difficult. These people will judge you, test you. They'll want to see if you're worthy of being my wife. You'll need to be strong." "I can be strong. I know you can." And the way he said it, like he really believed it, sent a strange warmth through her chest. The night of the dinner party arrived too quickly. Elena spent the afternoon being primped and polished by a team of stylists Giselle had sent. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist. Her makeup was dramatic but sophisticated. And the dress was stunning. Deep crimson silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor, with a neckline that showed just enough skin to be interesting without being scandalous. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like she belonged at Dante's side. Maria appeared in the doorway, her eyes shining. "Oh dear, you look beautiful." "Thank you." Elena smoothed her hands over the silk nervously. "Is it too much?" "Not at all, it's perfect." Maria hesitated, then added, "Mr. Russo is waiting for you in the foyer." Elena took a deep breath, steeling herself. "You can do this. You have to do this." The heels made her taller as she descended the grand staircase, but she still felt small, vulnerable, until she saw Dante at the bottom, looking up at her with an expression that made her breath catch. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like it had been made for his body specifically. Probably had been. His hair was perfectly styled, his jaw freshly shaved. He looked powerful, dangerous. And when his eyes met hers, something heated flickered in their depths before he controlled it. "Elena," his voice was rougher than usual. "You look incredible." "Thank you." She reached the bottom of the stairs, acutely aware of how close they were standing. "You look very handsome." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Shall we?" He offered his arm. She took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath the expensive fabric. Together, they walked toward the sound of voices and clinking glasses coming from the dining room. Here we go, Elena thought. Time to play the devoted wife. She just hoped she was a good enough actress to pull it off. The dining room glittered with crystal and candlelight, filled with people whose smiles didn't reach their eyes. Elena felt their attention turn to her and Dante the moment they entered, a collective assessment that made her skin prickle. She kept her expression calm, her hand steady on Dante's arm. "There he is!" a voice boomed from across the room. A large man with silver hair and a ruddy face approached, arms spread wide. "Dante, and this must be your beautiful bride." "Vincent." Dante's tone was cordial but cool. "Thank you for coming. Elena, this is Vincent Marconi. He runs the shipping operations at the port." "Among other things," Vincent added with a laugh that felt too loud. His eyes raked over Elena in a way that made her want to step back. "You're a lucky man, Dante. Very lucky indeed." "I know." Dante's hand moved to the small of Elena's back, a gesture that looked casual but felt protective. "If you'll excuse us, Vincent, we should greet our other guests." He steered her away smoothly, his hand warm through the thin silk of her dress. "That's the kind of man you'll meet tonight," he murmured near her ear. "Smile, be polite, but never be alone with him." "Noted." The next hour was a blur of introductions. Councilman Rodriguez, who talked about urban development while his eyes calculated political advantage. Judge Catherine Walsh, who kissed both Elena's cheeks and commented on how young she looked. Marco DeVito, who ran casinos and smelled like expensive cologne and cigars. Anthony Chen, whose tech investments made him a billionaire and whose handshake was surprisingly gentle. They all watched her, weighed her, tried to determine if she was an asset or a liability. Elena played her part perfectly. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, touched Dante's arm with just enough familiarity to seem natural. She could feel him relax slightly beside her as the evening progressed, his initial tension easing. "You're doing well, he said quietly as they moved toward the dining table. "Better than well." "I'm a quick learner." Clearly. His hand found hers as they took their seats at the head of the table, their fingers intertwining briefly before he released her. Even that small touch sent heat up her arm. Dinner was an elaborate affair, course after course of food Elena barely tasted. She was too focused on the conversations happening around her, the undercurrents of power and threat that ran beneath every polite word. These people were dangerous, all of them, and she was supposed to sit here and pretend she belonged. "So, Elena," Judge Walsh said from across the table, her voice carrying over the other conversations, "how are you finding married life?" Every head turned toward her. Elena felt Dante go still beside her. "It's an adjustment," she said carefully, "but a welcome one." That's diplomatic. Walsh's smile was sharp. But between us women, how is it really? Dante has quite the reputation. Catherine, Dante's voice held a warning. I'm just curious. Walsh's eyes glittered. We all are. It was such a whirlwind romance. Elena felt the trap closing. Whatever she said would be dissected, analyzed, used. She glanced at Dante, saw the tension in his jaw, the way his hand had curled into a fist on the table. Then she made a choice. I'll be honest, Elena said, meeting Walsh's gaze directly. When my father first told me about the arrangement, I was terrified. Everyone knows who Dante is, what he's capable of. I thought I was being fed to a monster. The room had gone completely silent. Dante's expression was unreadable, but she could feel the coiled energy in him, like he was preparing for a fight. Elena continued, her voice steady. But the truth is, he's been nothing but respectful, patient. He could have demanded anything from me, and I would have had no choice but to comply. Instead, he's given me space, freedom, a home that's become mine as much as his. She reached over and placed her hand on top of Dante's clenched fist, feeling the muscles loosen slightly under her touch. So yes, it's an adjustment, but not the nightmare I expected. The silence stretched for another heartbeat. Then Vincent Marconi started clapping, breaking the tension. Well said. Well said indeed. Others joined in, the applause scattered but genuine. Judge Walsh's smile had become fixed, like she'd bitten into something sour. Dante turned his hand over beneath Elena's, threading their fingers together and squeezing gently. Thank you, he murmured, too quietly for anyone else to hear. The rest of dinner passed more smoothly. People relaxed, conversations flowed, and Elena found herself almost enjoying parts of it. Almost. She caught the way men looked at her when they thought Dante wasn't watching, the speculation in their eyes. The way women assessed her jewelry, her dress, trying to calculate her worth. After dinner, guests mingled in the drawing room with drinks and cigars. Elena excused herself to the powder room, needing a moment away from the scrutiny. The bathroom was as elegant as the rest of the house. Marble and gold fixtures, a mirror framed in ornate scrollwork. Elena stared at her reflection, barely recognizing the woman looking back. Was this who she was now? Dante Russo's wife, playing games with people who could destroy her without blinking? The door opened behind her. Elena's heart jumped, but it was only Judge Walsh, her heels clicking on the marble floor. That was quite a performance at dinner, Walsh said, touching up her lipstick in the mirror. I was just being honest. Were you? Walsh capped her lipstick, turning to face Elena directly. Or was it a very clever piece of theater designed to make Dante look less like the ruthless bastard we all know he is? Elena kept her expression neutral. Why would I do that? Because you're smarter than you look. Walsh moved closer, invading Elena's space deliberately. Let me give you some advice, girl to girl. Men like Dante don't change. They don't suddenly become good husbands just because they put a ring on your finger. Whatever he's showing you now, it's an act. Eventually you'll see who he really is, and by then, it'll be too late to run. I'm not planning to run. Everyone plans to run eventually. Walsh's smile was pitying. Some just don't make it out. She left, her perfume lingering in the air like poison. Elena gripped the edge of the sink, her hands shaking slightly. Was Walsh right? Was she being naive, believing Dante's promises? When she returned to the drawing room, Dante was deep in conversation with Anthony Chen and Marco DeVito. His eyes found her immediately, though, tracking her movement across the room with an intensity that made her breath catch. She gave him a small smile, trying to signal she was fine. His expression said he didn't believe her. The party finally began winding down around midnight. Guests made their farewells, praising the evening and making promises to see each other soon. Elena's face hurt from smiling. Her feet ached in the heels, and exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. Finally, the last guest left. The door closed, and Elena sagged against the wall, her careful composure cracking. You did beautifully, Dante said, shrugging off his jacket. I mean it. You were perfect. I don't feel perfect. I feel like I just ran a marathon. These events are exhausting, even for me. He loosened his tie, the gesture somehow intimate in the quiet house. Come on, let's get you upstairs. They climbed the staircase together, neither speaking. When they reached Elena's bedroom door, Dante paused. What Judge Walsh said to you in the bathroom, he began. I saw her follow you. I'm assuming it wasn't pleasant. You assume correctly. She's trying to scare you, drive a wedge between us. His jaw tightened. Catherine Walsh has hated me for years. Her son was involved in some bad business, and I handled it. She blames me for his current situation. What situation? He's in prison. Dante's tone was flat. Where he belongs. Elena absorbed this. She said you'll eventually show your true colors, that I'm naive for believing otherwise. And what do you believe? She looked up at him, studying his face in the dim hallway light. I don't know yet, but I don't think you're a monster. If you were, you wouldn't have given me a choice. Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe, or something deeper. Elena? Good night, Dante. She opened her door quickly before whatever was building between them could become something more. Thank you for tonight. Good night. She closed the door and leaned against it, her heart racing. Through the wood, she heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. The next morning, Elena woke late, her body demanding the rest it had been denied. When she finally made it downstairs, she found Dante in the breakfast room, reading a newspaper with a cup of coffee. Good morning, he said without looking up. There's fresh coffee in the pot. Elena poured herself a cup, adding cream and sugar. Did I miss anything important? Just the usual disaster that is world news. He folded the paper, setting it aside. I wanted to talk to you about something. Her stomach tightened. Okay. Last night proved that you can handle yourself in my world. You impressed a lot of people who aren't easily impressed. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I think it's time we started appearing more together. Not just at formal events, but in daily life. Dinners out, charity functions, that sort of thing. Why? Because right now we're still a curiosity. People are waiting to see if this marriage will last. The more we're seen as a unit, the less they'll question it. So more performances. Yes. He met her gaze. I know it's not ideal, but it's necessary. Elena sipped her coffee, thinking. What's in it for me? Dante blinked, clearly not expecting the question. What do you mean? You're asking me to spend more time playing a role, being scrutinized, probably dealing with more people like Judge Walsh. What do I get in return? A slow smile crossed his face, the first real smile she'd seen from him. It transformed his features, making him look younger, less dangerous. You're negotiating with me. I like that. Everything's a negotiation, isn't it? In your world? True. He leaned back in his chair, considering. What do you want? Freedom, Elena said immediately. Real freedom, to come and go as I please without armed guards following me everywhere, to make my own decisions about how I spend my time. Elena, the security isn't negotiable. My enemies are your problem, not mine. She set down her cup. You said I have your protection. Prove it. Let me live like a normal person, not a prisoner. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching her face. You're asking me to risk your safety. I'm asking you to trust me, and to let me trust myself. She held his gaze. I'll be careful. I won't do anything stupid, but I can't live in this house forever, only leaving when you need me to smile for an audience. You're right. The admission seemed to cost him something. You're absolutely right. Okay, you can have more freedom, but I want you to carry a phone with GPS tracking, and if there's ever a threat, you get security immediately. No arguments. Deal. They shook hands across the table, the touch brief but electric. When Elena pulled away, her palm tingled. So, Dante said, clearing his throat, since we're renegotiating terms, is there anything else you want? Elena thought about it. Answers? Real ones? You know everything about me, but I know almost nothing about you. What do you want to know? Everything. She leaned forward. Who you really are. How you became this. What you actually want from this marriage beyond the public appearance of legitimacy. Dante's expression shuddered slightly. Some of those answers aren't pretty. I didn't expect them to be. He studied her for another long moment, then stood. Come with me. Elena followed him through the house, past the library and the formal rooms, to a door she'd never noticed before. Dante pressed his thumb to a scanner, and the lock clicked open. Beyond was a room that looked like a command center. Multiple screens showed security feeds from around the property and what looked like other locations throughout the city. A desk held several computers and stacks of files. Maps covered one wall, marked with pins and notes. "This is the real heart of my operation," Dante said, closing the door behind them. "Very few people are allowed in here, but if you want answers, you should see what you're really asking about." Elena moved to the maps, studying the markers. Some she recognized: the port, downtown buildings, neighborhoods. Others meant nothing to her. "I control most of the shipping that comes through this city," Dante explained. "Legitimate and otherwise. I have interests in construction, real estate, several restaurants and clubs. I launder money for people who need their finances to look clean. I provide protection to businesses in exchange for payment, and occasionally I handle problems that the law can't or won't touch." "Problems?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "Bad people doing bad things. I stop them." His tone was matter of fact. "Sometimes permanently." Elena turned to face him. "You kill people." "When necessary, when they've proven themselves too dangerous to live." He didn't flinch from her gaze. "I'm not a good man, Elena. I've never claimed to be. But I have rules. I don't hurt innocents. I don't traffic in human lives. I don't peddle drugs that destroy communities. The people I eliminate are predators who prey on the weak." "And who decides who deserves to die? You?" "Yes. Simple, direct, along with information from sources I trust. I don't act on impulse or emotion. Every decision is carefully considered." Elena's mind reeled. She'd known, intellectually, what Dante was. But hearing him say it so plainly, standing in this room that coordinated violence and crime, made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because you asked for the truth." Dante moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the enclosed space. "Because I'm tired of pretending with you. You're my wife. You should know who you're tied to, and if I can't handle it, then we figure out what comes next." His voice softened slightly. "But I don't think you're going to run. I think you're stronger than you believe." Elena looked around the room again, at the evidence of Dante's empire laid out in stark detail. He was right. She could run. Demand an annulment, go back to her father's house, pretend none of this had happened. But Walsh's words echoed in her mind. Everyone plans to run eventually. Some just don't make it out. Maybe the trick was not to run at all. Maybe the trick was to stand her ground and figure out how to survive in this new reality. "Okay," she said finally. "Show me more. Explain how it all works." Dante's eyes widened slightly. Surprise again, breaking through his control. "You're sure? You said I should know who I'm tied to, so teach me." For the next 2 hours, Dante walked her through his operations. He explained the legitimate businesses that provided cover and cash flow, the network of informants who kept him ahead of his enemies, the alliances with other families that kept the city from descending into open warfare, the careful balance of power he maintained through equal parts fear and respect. Elena listened, asked questions, tried to understand the logic of this world. It was brutal, unforgiving, built on violence and the threat of violence. But there was also structure, rules, a strange kind of order in the chaos. "Why did you really need a wife?" she asked when he'd finished. The truth this time. Dante leaned against the desk, crossing his arms. "There's a faction within the other families who see me as unstable, too young, too ruthless, without the softening influence of family. They've been pushing for someone more traditional to take over my territory. A wife makes me look more legitimate, settled, less likely to do something reckless. So I'm window dressing." "Your protection," he corrected. "For both of us. Your father's debts would have gotten him killed eventually. This way he's safe under my umbrella. And I get the appearance of stability I need to keep my position. Very transactional. Everything in my world is transactional." He paused. "But that doesn't mean it has to stay that way." Elena's heart skipped. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Dante ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of uncertainty. "I didn't expect to like you, to respect you, but after last night, after seeing how you handled yourself, how you stood up to Walsh and negotiated with me this morning, you're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" Someone weaker, someone who would need to be managed and controlled. His gaze was intent on her face. But you don't need managing, you need partnership. The word hung between them, loaded with possibility. Is that what you're offering? Elena asked carefully. Partnership? I don't know yet. Dante's honesty was jarring, but I think it could be, if we're both willing to try. Before Elena could respond, an alarm beeped from one of the computers. Dante moved to check it, his expression darkening as he read the screen. What is it? Elena asked. Security breach. Someone tried to access the eastern gate. He was already pulling out his phone, typing rapidly. Probably nothing, but I need to check it out. Should I? Stay here. Lock the door behind me. He moved toward the exit, then paused. Elena, thank you for listening, for not running. I'm not going to run, she said, surprised by how much she meant it. Dante's answering smile was brief but genuine. Then he was gone, and Elena was alone in the nerve center of his criminal empire. She looked around the room, at the maps and screens and files. This was her life now. These were the stakes. And somehow, standing here surrounded by evidence of violence and power, she felt more alive than she had in years. Maybe that made her as broken as Dante. Or maybe it just meant she'd finally found a place where her survival instincts had purpose. Elena left the command center, locking the door behind her as instructed. The house felt different now, like she was seeing it for the first time. Not a prison, but a fortress. Not a cage, but a stronghold. She found Maria in the kitchen, preparing lunch. The older woman looked up with a smile that faded when she saw Elena's expression. Is everything all right, dear? I don't know, Elena said honestly. Maria, can I ask you something? Of course. How long have you worked for Dante? 15 years. Maria's hands continued their work, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. Since he was just starting out, have you ever been afraid of him? Maria considered this, her knife pausing. Afraid? No. Cautious, perhaps. Respectful, certainly. But afraid? Never. Mr. Russo is many things, but he's not cruel, not to those who are loyal to him. And to those who aren't? That's different. Maria met her gaze. This world has rules, Mrs. Russo, harsh ones. But they keep everyone safe. Mr. Russo enforces those rules. It's not always pretty, but it's necessary. Elena thought about this as she helped Maria prepare lunch, a simple task that felt grounding after the morning's revelations. When Dante returned an hour later, she was setting the table on the terrace. False alarm, he said, his tone clipped. Kids messing around near the fence. But I've increased patrols just in case. They ate in silence for several minutes. Elena could feel Dante watching her, waiting for some reaction to what he'd shown her that morning. I'm not afraid of you, she said finally. Dante set down his fork. You should be, at least a little. Why? Because you've killed people who deserved it? Because you run an empire built on questionable legality? She shook her head. You could have hurt me 100 times by now, forced me into things I didn't want. But you haven't. That tells me more about who you are than anything else. You're naive. Maybe. Elena met his gaze squarely. Or maybe I'm just tired of being afraid. I've spent my whole life being invisible, insignificant, powerless. This marriage was supposed to be my punishment, but instead it's the first time I've felt like I matter, like I have agency. Dante stared at her, something intense and unreadable in his expression. You matter, he said quietly. You have no idea how much. The words settled between them, heavy with implication. Elena's pulse quickened, awareness crackling through the air like electricity before a storm. Dante. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered it with obvious frustration, listening for several seconds before his expression went cold. When? A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stood, already moving. I have to go. There's a situation at one of the warehouses. Is it dangerous? Potentially. He grabbed his jacket from inside. Stay in the house. I'll have extra security posted. Be careful. He paused at that, turning back to look at her. I will. Then he was gone, the sound of his car starting moments later. Elena stood alone on the terrace, watching the sun begin its descent toward the horizon. Something had shifted between them today, something that felt both dangerous and inevitable. She was Dante Russo's wife, not just in name, but in reality. And that reality was far more complicated than she'd ever imagined. The question was, did she have the courage to fully step into it? As evening fell and Dante still hadn't returned, Elena found herself pacing the library, unable to settle. Every car sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. It was after 9 when she heard the door open. She rushed to the foyer, relief flooding through her when she saw Dante, until she noticed the blood on his shirt. "You're hurt," she said, moving toward him without thinking. "It's not mine." But he looked exhausted, his usual control frayed at the edges. "Someone tried to hijack one of my shipments. We handled it." "Handled it how?" "You don't want to know." "Yes, I do." Elena reached for his hand, noticing scraped knuckles. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up." She led him upstairs to his suite, the first time she'd entered his private space. It was similar to hers, but darker, more masculine, with fewer personal touches. She pushed him toward the bathroom. "Sit," she ordered, pointing to the edge of the massive tub. Dante obeyed, too tired to argue. Elena found a first aid kit under the sink and knelt in front of him, carefully cleaning the scrapes on his hands. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I know." She dabbed antiseptic on a particularly bad scrape, feeling him tense. "But we're partners, right? That's what partners do." Dante's hand came up, catching her chin gently, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. "Elena, I need you to understand something. What I do, the life I lead, it's dangerous. People want me dead, and by extension, they want to hurt you to get to me. Are you really prepared for that?" "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The air between them felt charged, heavy with tension that had been building for days. Dante's thumb brushed across her lower lip, the touch feather light but sending heat racing through her. "You're playing a dangerous game," he murmured. "So are you." For a moment she thought he might kiss her, really kiss her, not the chaste press of lips from their wedding. His eyes darkened, his head lowering slightly. Then he pulled back, the moment breaking. "You should go. It's late." Elena stood, feeling dismissed and frustrated in equal measure. "Good night, Dante." "Good night." She left him sitting in his bathroom, blood on his shirt and shadows in his eyes. And as she walked back to her own room, Elena realized something that should have terrified her, but instead felt like inevitability. She was falling for her husband. The dangerous, violent, complicated man who'd bought her like property, but treated her like something precious. And that was going to change everything. The days after that night fell into a new rhythm, one that felt both familiar and strange. Dante kept his distance, but it was a different kind of distance now, charged with awareness, thick with things left unsaid. Every accidental brush of hands at breakfast felt deliberate. Every glance across a room lasted a beat too long. Elena caught herself watching him when she thought he wasn't looking. The way he rubbed the back of his neck when he was frustrated. How his jaw tightened when someone on the phone said something he didn't like. The rare moments when his guard dropped and something almost vulnerable flickered across his face before he locked it away again. She was learning to read him, and that felt more intimate than anything physical they might have done. A week later, Dante appeared at her bedroom door early in the morning, already dressed in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. "Get ready, we're going out." Elena looked up from her book, surprised. "Where?" "You wanted freedom. I'm giving you some." His expression was unreadable. "There's a charity luncheon downtown, art auction to benefit children's hospitals. I need to make an appearance, and it'll be good for us to be seen together. Give me 20 minutes. She chose a navy dress that Maria had helped her pick out. Elegant but not showy, with a hemline that hit just above her knees. When she came downstairs, Dante was waiting by the door, his eyes tracking over her in a way that made her skin heat. "You look nice," he said, the compliment simple but genuine. "So do you." The drive downtown gave Elena her first real look at the city beyond the mansion's walls. They passed through neighborhoods that ranged from gleaming high-rises to blocks where buildings slumped against each other like tired old men. Dante's territory, she realized. All of it. "That building there," he said, pointing to a renovated warehouse. "Used to be a drug den. I bought it, cleaned it out, turned it into affordable housing. 30 families live there now." Elena looked at him in surprise. "You do that often? The affordable housing thing?" "When I can. It's good business. Keeps neighborhoods stable, reduces crime, makes people loyal. He paused. And it's the right thing to do, even if that's not usually my primary motivation. You're more complicated than people think. Most people are. He glanced at her. You included. The luncheon was held in a hotel ballroom that dripped with wealth. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, women in designer dresses that cost more than Elena's entire previous wardrobe. She felt Dante's hand settle on the small of her back as they entered, a grounding touch. Stay close, he murmured, and remember, you belong here just as much as anyone else. The afternoon passed in a blur of champagne and small talk. Elena met the wives of Dante's business associates, women who smiled with their mouths but assessed her with calculating eyes. She admired art she didn't understand, bid on a piece she didn't want just because Dante nodded at her to do it, and played the role of devoted wife so convincingly she almost believed it herself. But the real test came when Vincent Marconi approached during the auction, his face already flushed with alcohol despite the early hour. Dante, Elena! His voice boomed across the room. Wonderful to see you both. Vincent. Dante's tone was cordial, but cool. His hand tightened slightly on Elena's waist. I wanted to apologize for my behavior at your dinner party, Vincent continued, swaying slightly. I may have been a bit forward with your lovely wife. Too much wine, you understand. I understand perfectly. Dante's voice had gone flat, dangerous. And I trust it won't happen again. Of course not. Of course not. Vincent's eyes slid to Elena, lingering just a moment too long. Though I can hardly blame myself. If I had a wife that beautiful, I'd keep her locked up tight. Can't be too careful. Elena felt Dante go rigid beside her. The temperature in their immediate vicinity seemed to drop 10 degrees. Several nearby conversations faltered as people sensed the shift. Careful, Vincent, Dante said quietly. You're dangerously close to insulting my wife, and I take insults to my wife very personally. Vincent's smile faltered. I didn't mean, I think you did. Dante stepped forward, and despite being shorter than Vincent by several inches, he somehow seemed larger, more threatening. Let me be very clear. Elena is not property to be locked up. She's not a possession to be commented on. She's my wife, and she deserves your respect. Failed to show it again, and we're going to have a very different kind of conversation. Do you understand me? The ballroom had gone quiet. Everyone was watching now, waiting to see how this would play out. Vincent's face had gone from flushed to pale. I understand. My apologies, Mrs. Russo. I meant no disrespect. Apology accepted, Elena said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Dante held Vincent's gaze for another long moment, then nodded. Enjoy the rest of the auction, Vincent. They walked away, Dante's hand still at Elena's back, and gradually the conversations around them resumed. But Elena could feel the stares, hear the whispers. Dante had just made a very public statement about her value to him. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly when they were out of earshot. Yes, I did. His jaw was still tight. Vincent needed to understand the line. They all did. The line? That you're not to be touched, not to be threatened, not even to be looked at wrong. He stopped walking, turning to face her. You're under my protection, Elena. That means something in this world. It means you're untouchable. I'm not fragile. I know you're not, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stand by while someone like Vincent treats you like an object. His expression softened slightly. You stood up for me at the dinner party. This is me standing up for you. Something warm unfurled in Elena's chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. It's what a husband should do. He offered his arm. Come on, let's get out of here before I say something else that ruins the charity auction. They left early, much to the obvious disappointment of several people who'd been working up the courage to approach Dante. In the car, Elena found herself smiling despite everything. What? Dante asked, noticing. Nothing. Just, that was the first time I've seen you lose your temper in public. I didn't lose my temper. You came close. Maybe. He was quiet for a moment. Vincent's been testing boundaries for months. Someone needed to put him in his place. And you're someone. I'm the only one who can. Not arrogance, just fact. That's what being in my position means. You enforce the rules, or the rules stop existing. Elena thought about this as they drove through the city. What happens now? With Vincent? Nothing, probably. He's too smart to retaliate directly, but he'll remember. And the next time he considers stepping out of line, he'll remember that I don't tolerate disrespect to you. So I'm a message. You're my wife. Dante glanced at her. But yes, in a way. Everything in my world is a message. Every action has meaning beyond the surface. That sounds exhausting. It is. The admission was quiet, almost reluctant. It's why I don't sleep much. Too many things to consider, too many angles to watch. Elena studied his profile, the strong nose, the sharp jaw, the faint lines of stress around his eyes. He looked tired, she realized, not physically, but deep in his bones, like he'd been carrying weight for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to set it down. When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to? She asked. Not because it was strategic or necessary, just because it made you happy. Dante was silent for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then quietly, I don't remember. The honesty of it broke something in her chest. That's sad. It's reality. He shrugged. Happiness is a luxury I can't afford. Not in this life. Everyone deserves some happiness. Maybe. He pulled up to the mansion gates, waiting for them to open. But wanting something doesn't mean you get to have it. They went inside, and Elena expected Dante to disappear to his office like he usually did. Instead, he followed her to the library, standing in the doorway like he couldn't quite decide whether to stay or go. Did you need something? Elena asked, settling into her favorite chair. No, He trailed off, running a hand through his hair. I don't know, I thought I'd see if you wanted company. The vulnerability in the admission made her smile. I'd like that. Dante chose the chair across from hers, picking up a book from the side table and flipping through it without really reading. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun streaming through the windows and painting everything gold. Can I ask you something? Elena said eventually. You can ask. I might not answer. Fair enough. She set down her own book. The night you came home with blood on your shirt, you said someone tried to hijack your shipment. What happened to them? Dante's expression went carefully blank. You don't want to know that. I asked, didn't I? He studied her for a long moment. We caught 3 of them. 2 are in the hospital. The 3rd is in the ground. Elena absorbed this. She should be horrified, should be afraid. Instead, she found herself asking, did he deserve it? He shot one of my men in the chest. The man has a wife and 2 kids. Dante's voice was flat. So yes, he deserved it. Do you ever regret it? The violence? Sometimes. Late at night when I can't sleep, I think about the people I've killed. Wonder if there was another way. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But then I remember why I did it. Remember the people I protected by removing a threat. And the regret fades. That's very pragmatic. It's survival. He met her gaze. In my world, hesitation gets you killed. Mercy is seen as weakness. I learned that lesson early. How early? Dante was quiet for a long time. Then he started talking, his voice low and distant, like he was speaking from somewhere far away. I was 17 when my father was murdered, shot in the street like a dog while I watched from across the road. The men who did it worked for a rival family, the Castellanos. They wanted our territory, and my father wouldn't give it up peacefully. Elena's breath caught. I'm sorry. Don't be. He wasn't a good man. Beat my mother until she left when I was 10. Beat me when he was drunk enough. Dante's jaw tightened. But he was still my father, and they killed him to send a message to everyone else, that the Castellanos were in charge now. What did you do? I went to war. Simple words, but weighted with history. Spent 5 years hunting down everyone involved, started with the men who pulled the trigger and worked my way up to the Castellano family leadership. By the time I was done, they were broken. And I had their territory, their businesses, their power. You were 22. 23 by the end. He looked at her directly. So yes, Elena, I'm dangerous, I'm violent. I've done things that would make you sick if you knew the details. But everything I've done has been for a reason. To protect what's mine. To survive in a world that eats the weak. Elena should be running, should be demanding he let her go, Annul the marriage, anything to get away from a man who spoke so casually about murder and revenge. Instead, she found herself understanding him in a way that probably said terrible things about her own character. "I don't think you're a monster," she said quietly. "Then you're not paying attention." "I am. I'm paying very close attention." She stood, moving to kneel in front of his chair, looking up at him. "And I see someone who's been surviving for so long he's forgotten how to live. Someone who's so busy protecting everyone else that he never protects himself." Dante's hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" She leaned into his touch without thinking. "When was the last time someone took care of you, Dante? When was the last time you let anyone close enough to try?" His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, the touch sending shivers down her spine. "That's not how my life works." Maybe it should. The air between them felt heavy, charged with possibility. Dante's dark eyes searched her face, and Elena could see the war happening behind them. Want versus control, desire versus discipline. "Elena," he said, his voice rough, "you need to move. Right now." "Why?" "Because if you don't, I'm going to kiss you, and I'm not sure I'll be able to stop." Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. She should move, should maintain the distance they'd carefully constructed. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. "Then don't stop," she whispered. Dante made a sound low in his throat, half frustration, half surrender. Then his mouth was on hers, and everything else fell away. This wasn't the chaste press of lips from their wedding. This was hunger, need, weeks of tension finally finding release. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her head back as he deepened the kiss. Elena's hands came up to grip his shoulders, anchoring herself against the onslaught of sensation. He kissed like he did everything else, with absolute focus and devastating control. But beneath the control, Elena could feel something wilder straining to break free, something that wanted to consume and possess and claim. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake," he said, but he didn't let go. "Probably. We should stop." "We should." Elena kissed him again, softer this time. "But I don't want to." "Elena." The sound of a phone ringing shattered the moment. Dante pulled back, cursing under his breath as he answered it. "What?" His tone was sharp. Then his expression changed, going from irritated to cold in an instant. "When? Where?" A pause. "I'm on my way." He stood, already moving toward the door. "I have to go. There's been an incident at one of the clubs." "What kind of incident?" "The kind that requires my immediate attention." He stopped at the doorway, looking back at her. His eyes were still dark with want, but his expression had gone hard again. Back to business. "Elena, what just happened?" "We'll talk about it later," she said, even though her lips still tingled and her pulse still raced. "Go. Handle your crisis." He nodded once, then was gone. Elena sank back into her chair, touching her fingers to her mouth. What had she just done? What were they doing? She didn't have answers. All she knew was that everything had changed again. The careful distance they'd maintained had shattered, and there was no putting it back together. The question was, what would they build in its place? Hours passed with no word from Dante. Elena tried to read, to watch television, to do anything that would distract her from replaying that kiss over and over in her mind. Nothing worked. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs for water. That's when she heard voices coming from Dante's office. His voice, low and angry, and another she didn't recognize. "Told you this would happen. You can't keep pushing them without consequences." "I know what I'm doing, Marco." Dante's voice was tight with controlled fury. "The Castellanos are testing boundaries. If I don't respond, they'll see it as weakness. And if you respond too aggressively, you'll start a war. There's already a war. We're just deciding how it's going to be fought." Elena's hand froze on the banister. The Castellanos. The family that killed Dante's father. They were making moves against him. "What about your wife?" Marco asked. "She's a vulnerability now. Everyone knows it after that scene with Vincent at the auction." "Elena is off limits. Everyone knows that too. Knowing it and respecting it are different things. If the Castellanos want to hurt you, she's an easy target." Then they'll die trying. The finality in Dante's tone sent chills down Elena's spine. No one touches her. I don't care who they are or what they think they can get away with. Elena is protected. Understood? Understood. But Dante, you're getting attached. That makes you vulnerable. I'm handling it. Are you? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're falling for your own wife. And in our world, that's dangerous. Silence. Elena held her breath, waiting for Dante's response. Get out, Dante said finally. I'll handle the Castellanos. You focus on securing the shipments. Elena heard footsteps and quickly ducked into the kitchen before Marco could see her. She waited until she heard the front door close, then made her way back toward the stairs. Dante was standing in the hallway outside his office, still dressed in the blood-spattered clothes he must have been wearing when he left. He looked exhausted, dangerous, and somehow still impossibly magnetic. How much did you hear? He asked without turning around. Enough. No point in lying. The Castellanos are coming after you. The Castellanos have been coming after me for 15 years. This is nothing new. Marco said I'm a vulnerability. Marco worries too much. Dante finally turned to face her. You're not a vulnerability. You're... He stopped himself. I'm what? Protected. You're protected. That's all that matters. Elena moved closer, not caring that he looked like he'd just come from a war zone. He said you're getting attached. Are you? Dante's jaw tightened. This isn't the time for this conversation. When is the time? After someone tries to use me to get to you. She stepped even closer, close enough to smell copper and gunpowder on his clothes. I heard what you said in there, that no one touches me, that you'd kill anyone who tried. That's not just protection, Dante, that's... Don't. His voice cracked slightly. Don't finish that sentence. Why not? Because I can't... He turned away, his shoulders rigid. Because I can't afford to care about you that way. It makes me weak. It puts you in danger. It's exactly what Marco said, a vulnerability that my enemies will exploit. So what was that kiss? A mistake. But the way he said it, like it hurt him to force out the words, told her everything. Elena walked around to face him, forcing him to look at her. You're lying, to me and to yourself. Elena, you don't understand what you're asking for, the kind of target you're painting on yourself by getting close to me. I'm already close to you. I'm your wife. In name only. Is it? She reached up, touching his face gently despite the blood and the fury written there. Because it doesn't feel like it's just a name anymore. Not to me. And I don't think it's just a name to you either. Dante caught her wrist, his grip gentle despite the tension vibrating through him. You should be afraid of me, of what I am, what I do. That kiss, it shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't want you the way I do. This whole thing is wrong. Why? Because you're not supposed to have feelings? Because men like you aren't allowed to care? Elena held his gaze. That's the stupidest rule I've ever heard. A sound escaped him that might have been a laugh or a sob. You're going to get yourself killed. Then at least I'll die living instead of just surviving. The words hit him like a physical blow. She could see it in his eyes, the moment his control finally cracked completely. Then he was kissing her again, harder this time, more desperate. His hands were in her hair, on her waist, pulling her against him like he couldn't get close enough. Elena kissed him back just as fiercely, tasting copper and fury and need. This was reckless, dangerous, everything she shouldn't want, and yet she'd never felt more certain of anything in her life. When they broke apart this time, Dante pressed his forehead to hers, his breathing ragged. I'm terrified, he admitted quietly. For the first time in years, I'm actually terrified, because losing you would destroy me. Then don't lose me. Elena's hands cupped his face. Whatever's coming, we face it together. That's what partners do, remember? Partners. The word seemed to steady him. Okay? Together. He kissed her once more, softer now, like a promise. Then he stepped back, putting space between them, even though it clearly cost him. I need to shower, change. Then we're going to talk about security, real security. His expression had gone serious again. The Castellanos making moves changes things. You're going to have guards with you anytime you leave the property. No arguments. I won't argue. Not about this. Good. He started toward the stairs, then paused. Elena? What Marco said about me falling for you, he wasn't wrong. Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Elena standing alone in the hallway with her heart racing and her world tilted completely off its axis. She'd come into this marriage expecting a cage. Instead, she'd found something infinitely more dangerous. She'd found a reason to stay. Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed replaying Dante's words, the way his voice had cracked when he admitted he was terrified. The feel of his mouth on hers, desperate and demanding. By the time dawn broke through her windows, she'd given up any pretense of rest. She found him in the kitchen at 6, already dressed and nursing a cup of black coffee. He looked up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. Couldn't sleep either? He asked. No. She poured her own coffee, adding cream and sugar while trying to ignore how aware she was of his presence. Are you going to pretend last night didn't happen? I should. He set down his cup. But I'm done pretending with you. The admission hung between them, honest and raw. Elena moved to sit beside him at the counter, close enough that their arms almost touched. So what now? She asked. Now we deal with reality. Dante's tone shifted, becoming more businesslike. The Castellanos aren't just making noise. They hit one of my clubs last night, trashed it, hurt 2 of my people. It's an escalation. Why now? You said they've been at war with you for years. Because they think they've found a weakness. He looked at her directly. You. They saw what happened at the auction with Vincent. They know I defended you publicly, and now they're going to test whether I meant it. Elena's stomach tightened. By coming after me. They'll try, but I won't let them get close. He pulled out his phone, showing her a security feed. I've doubled the guard rotation. There are cameras on every entrance, motion sensors on the perimeter. No one gets in or out without us knowing about it. You're turning this place into a fortress. I already had. Now I'm just making it tighter. He closed the phone. Elena, I need you to promise me something. Promise. If anything feels wrong, if you see anyone suspicious, if something happens that scares you, you call me immediately. Not security, me. Understood? Understood. I mean it. His hand found hers on the counter, threading their fingers together. I can't lose you. I won't survive it. The vulnerability in his voice made her chest ache. You won't lose me. I'm not that easy to get rid of. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. No, you're not. He stood, pulling her up with him. Come on, I want to show you something. He led her to the command center, the room where he'd first shown her the truth of his empire. But this time he pulled up different screens. Blueprints of the mansion, safe routes, emergency protocols. If something happens and we get separated, you follow this path. His finger traced a route on the screen. Through the kitchen, down to the wine cellar. There's a door behind the last rack that leads to a tunnel. It comes out 2 blocks away in a building I own. There's always a car waiting there with keys in the ignition and cash in the glove box. Elena stared at the elaborate escape plan. You've really thought this through. I've had years to plan for every possible scenario. He pulled up another screen showing various safe houses scattered throughout the city. If we can't get back here, these are the backup locations. They're all stocked with supplies, weapons, everything we'd need to lay low for a while. We? Yes, we. He turned to face her fully. I told you we're partners now. That means if I run, you run with me. If I fight, you're protected. There's no scenario where I leave you behind. Elena's throat felt tight. Why are you telling me all this? Because I need you to be prepared. I need you to know that no matter what happens, I have a plan to keep you safe. His hands came up to frame her face. And because I need you to trust me. Can you do that? I already do. The words came easier than they should have. I don't know why, but I do. Dante kissed her then, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. When he pulled back, his dark eyes were intense. I have to go out today. Meetings with the other families trying to de-escalate before this turns into open warfare. I need you to stay here. Don't leave the property for any reason. How long will you be gone? Most of the day. Maybe into the evening. He brushed a strand of hair back from her face. I know you hate being confined, but just for today, please, let me handle this without worrying about where you are. Okay. She caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. Be careful. Always am. He kissed her forehead, then her lips, then stepped back like it physically hurt him to create distance. Maria will be here if you need anything. And Elena? The security team has orders to shoot first and ask questions later if anyone tries to breach the perimeter, so don't go wandering outside. That's comforting. It's realistic. He grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. I'll call you when I can. Then he was gone, and Elena was left alone in a house that suddenly felt too big and too quiet. She spent the morning trying to distract herself. She read, but couldn't focus. Attempted to paint in the art studio she'd discovered on the third floor, but her hands were too restless. Finally, she ended up back in the library, curled up in Dante's chair because it smelled like him. Expensive cologne and something darker, more essential. Around noon, Maria brought lunch and tried to make conversation, but Elena's mind was elsewhere. Somewhere in the city, Dante was negotiating with people who wanted him dead. People who would use her to hurt him if they got the chance. The thought made her feel helpless in a way she hated. She'd spent so much of her life powerless, at the mercy of circumstances she couldn't control. This marriage was supposed to be more of the same, another situation where she had no agency, no choice. But instead, it had become something she wanted to fight for, someone she wanted to protect. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her phone rang at 2, Dante's name flashing on the screen. She answered immediately. How's it going? She asked. About as well as expected, which is to say, terribly. He sounded tired. The Castellanos are refusing to back down. They want compensation for territory they claim I took from them 15 years ago. That's ridiculous. You won that territory fairly. Fairly is relative, but yes, their claim has no merit. This is just posturing. They want to see if they can push me into a corner. He paused. How are you holding up? I'm fine. Bored, but fine. Bored is safe. I'll take bored. Background noise filtered through the phone. Voices, car horns. I have to go. Another meeting in 10 minutes. But I wanted to hear your voice. The admission made her smile despite everything. I wanted to hear yours too. I'll be home as soon as I can. Stay inside, Elena. Promise me. I promise. After he hung up, Elena paced the library restlessly. Outside the windows, she could see security guards making their rounds, their presence both reassuring and unsettling. She was safe here, trapped, but safe. The afternoon dragged on. Elena tried to nap but couldn't settle, tried to eat dinner but had no appetite. By 7, she was climbing the walls with nervous energy. That's when the lights went out. One second, the mansion was bright with evening illumination. The next, everything went dark. Complete, absolute darkness. Elena's heart kicked into overdrive. She fumbled for her phone, using its flashlight to navigate out of the library. Maria? She called. Maria, what happened? No response. The silence was wrong. Even with the power out, there should be noise, guards calling to each other, generators kicking on, something. Instead, there was nothing. Elena's hands shook as she pulled up Dante's number. It rang once before being cut off. No signal. She tried again. Same result. Fear spiked through her, cold and sharp. Something was very wrong. She remembered Dante's instructions from that morning. Through the kitchen, down to the wine cellar, tunnel exit 2 blocks away. She could do this. She just had to move. Elena crept toward the kitchen, her phone light showing the way. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat. Every creak of the house made her freeze. Where were the guards? Where was Maria? She'd just reached the kitchen when she heard it, the sound of breaking glass from somewhere on the first floor. Then voices, low and speaking rapid Italian. They were inside. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She killed the phone light, plunging herself into darkness, and pressed against the wall. The voices were getting closer. 2 men, maybe 3, moving through the house with purpose. Upstairs, probably. Check the bedrooms. Alive, remember. The boss wants her alive. Her alive. They were here for her. The Castellanos had sent men to take her. Elena forced herself to breathe slowly, quietly. She couldn't panic. Panic would get her killed or captured, and she wasn't about to let that happen. Dante had trained her for this, shown her the escape routes, told her to run. So she ran. She moved through the kitchen in complete darkness, muscle memory guiding her to the door that led down to the wine cellar. It was unlocked, thank whatever higher power might exist. She slipped through and closed it silently behind her, then felt her way down the stairs. Behind her, she heard footsteps entering the kitchen. Check every room. She's here somewhere. Elena's hands found the wine rack Dante had shown her. She counted bottles, 3 from the left, 2 down, and pulled. The entire rack swung open on hidden hinges, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. She didn't hesitate. She stepped through and pulled the rack closed behind her, hearing it click into place just as the cellar door above opened. Down here too! Fan out! Elena ran. The tunnel was pitch black, but she kept one hand on the wall and moved as fast as she dared. Her breath came in gasps that seemed impossibly loud in the confined space. Behind her, she could hear the wine rack being moved, men discovering the tunnel. She's in here! Move! Move! They were faster than her, heavier footfalls echoing off stone walls, getting closer. Elena pushed herself harder, ignoring the burn in her lungs, the way her heart felt like it might explode. She just needed to reach the exit. Just needed to get to the car Dante had promised would be waiting. The tunnel curved, and suddenly she could see light ahead. The exit. Elena sprinted the last 20 feet and burst through the door into a parking garage. The car was there, a nondescript sedan with dark windows. She yanked the driver's door open, thanking every star she could name that Dante had been paranoid enough to leave the keys in the ignition. The engine roared to life. Elena threw it into reverse just as 2 men burst through the tunnel door. One of them raised a gun. She floored it, the car shooting backward out of the parking spot. The windshield cracked as a bullet hit it, the sound making her scream. But she didn't stop. She whipped the car around and punched the gas, tires squealing as she shot out of the garage and onto the street. In the rearview mirror, she could see the men running after her, but she was already too far ahead. She took the first turn too fast, the car fishtailing before she got it under control. Then she was flying through dark streets, her hands white-knuckled on the wheel, her whole body shaking with adrenaline. She'd escaped. Somehow, impossibly, she'd escaped. But now what? She couldn't go back to the mansion. They were there, waiting. She couldn't go to her father's house. That would be the first place they'd look. And her phone had no signal, which meant she couldn't call Dante. Elena's mind raced. The safe houses. Dante had shown her safe houses. She tried to remember the locations he'd pointed out on the screen. One was in the warehouse district, near the port. Another was in a residential neighborhood on the west side. A third was... Her memory snagged on an image. An apartment building downtown, nondescript and unremarkable. Dante had said it was the closest to the mansion, easiest to reach in an emergency. This definitely qualified as an emergency. Elena navigated by memory and luck, taking turns randomly to make sure she wasn't being followed. 20 minutes later, she pulled up to a building that looked right, or at least she hoped it was right. She parked in the underground garage and found Unit 4B, exactly where Dante had said it would be. The door was locked, but there was a keypad. Elena tried the code Dante had mentioned. His mother's birthday, he'd said, one of the few sentimental gestures he allowed himself. The lock clicked open. Inside, the apartment was sparse but functional. Basic furniture, a kitchenette, blackout curtains on all the windows. Elena locked the door behind her and engaged the deadbolt, then the chain, then a third lock she hadn't even known existed. Only then did she allow herself to collapse against the wall, her legs giving out as the adrenaline finally crashed. She'd made it. She was safe, at least for now. But Dante didn't know where she was, and if the Castellanos had taken the mansion, if they'd hurt or killed his people getting to her, he was going to lose his mind. Elena checked her phone again. Still no signal. She tried the landline on the wall. Dead. They'd cut communication somehow, isolated the mansion before attacking, which meant Dante had no idea what was happening. For all he knew, she'd been taken. Or worse. She had to get word to him somehow. But how? She couldn't leave. They might be watching the building. Couldn't call. No signal. Couldn't... Wait. The computer. There was a laptop on the desk in the corner, and if this safe house was anything like the command center at the mansion, it would have secure internet access. Elena powered it up, her hands still shaking. The screen came to life, prompting for a password. She tried Dante's mother's birthday again, and incredibly, it worked. The desktop was bare except for one folder labeled Emergency Protocols. Inside was a single program, an encrypted messaging system. Elena opened it and found Dante's contact information already programmed in. She typed quickly, Safe House 4B, Mansion Compromised. Men came for me, but I escaped. Not hurt. Don't know status of guard/Maria. Be careful. She hit send and waited, staring at the screen. Seconds ticked by. Then a minute. 2. Had it gone through? Was he getting her messages? Finally, 3 dots appeared, indicating he was typing. Elena's breath caught. The response came through. Thank Christ, stay there, don't move, don't open the door for anyone except me. I'm coming. Elena. How long? Dante. 20 minutes. Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Elena. Not your fault. They would have come eventually. Just get here safe. Dante. I will. And then I'm going to burn their entire family to the ground. The message sent chills down her spine. She'd never heard such cold fury, not even in person. Whatever control Dante had been maintaining, it was gone now. The Castellanos had crossed a line, and they were going to pay for it. Elena closed the laptop and moved to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. The street below looked normal, people walking dogs, cars passing by, life continuing like her world hadn't just been turned inside out. She checked the time. 18 minutes since Dante's last message. She paced the small apartment, unable to settle. Every car that passed might be him, or might be them, come to finish what they'd started. At exactly 20 minutes, she heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Heavy, purposeful. Then a knock. 3 sharp raps followed by 2 quick ones. A code Dante must have established for exactly this situation. Elena rushed to the door, checking the peephole. Dante stood there, flanked by 2 large men in suits she recognized as his personal security. His expression was devastating, fury and relief warring for dominance. She unlocked the door and barely had time to open it before Dante was through, pulling her into his arms so hard it hurt. His hands were everywhere, her face, her hair, her back, like he needed physical proof she was whole and unharmed. You're okay, he said, the words more for himself than her. You're okay, you're okay. I'm okay. Elena wrapped her arms around him, feeling him shake. I followed the plan, just like you showed me. I know you did. He pulled back just enough to look at her, his eyes scanning her face for injuries. Did they touch you? Did they hurt you at all? No, I got out before they could catch me. The tunnel? Yes. They found it after I went through, but I had enough of a head start. She touched his face, feeling the tension vibrating through him. Dante, Maria, the guards. I don't know what happened to them. Marco's at the mansion now with a full team. He'll find them. Dante's jaw was tight. But that doesn't matter right now. All that matters is you're safe. What happens now? Now? His expression went cold, dangerous. Now I show the Castellanos what happens when they come after what's mine. He turned to the 2 men who'd come with him. Get her to the secondary location, the one outside the city. Full security detail. No one in or out without my explicit authorization. Wait, what? Elena grabbed his arm. You're not coming? I have something to handle first. Dante, no, you can't go after them alone. I'm not alone. I have 50 men moving into position as we speak. His hands cupped her face. Elena, I need to do this. They violated my home, threatened my wife. If I don't respond with overwhelming force, every other family in this city will think they can do the same. Then let me come with you. Absolutely not. We're partners, not in this. His voice was firm. I won't risk you. Not for revenge. Not for anything. He kissed her hard, desperately. Please, go with Tony and Marcus. Let me do what I need to do, and then I'll come find you, and we'll figure out what comes next. Elena wanted to argue, wanted to demand he let her stay, that they face this together like he'd promised. But she could see the fear still lurking in his eyes, the knowledge that he'd almost lost her tonight. He needed to do this. Needed to eliminate the threat so completely that no one would ever try again. Okay, she said finally. But Dante, come back to me. Whatever you have to do, however you have to do it, just come back. I will. He kissed her again, softer this time. I promise. Then he was gone, and Tony and Marcus were escorting her out a back exit to a car with dark windows and bulletproof glass. As they drove through the city toward whatever secondary location Dante had arranged, Elena stared out at the passing lights and tried not to think about what was coming. Dante had shown her restraint and control for weeks, had carefully maintained his civilized facade even when she knew the violence simmered beneath. But tonight, that facade had cracked completely. Tonight, she was going to see exactly what he was capable of when someone threatened what he loved. And despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the knowledge that people were probably going to die because of her, Elena couldn't bring herself to regret any of it. Because for the first time in her life, she mattered enough to someone that they'd go to war for her. She just hoped Dante survived the war he was about to start. The safe house outside the city turned out to be a cabin in the woods, isolated and heavily fortified. Tony and Marcus positioned themselves at strategic points, while Elena was shown to a bedroom with reinforced windows and a door that locked from the inside. She sat on the bed, still wearing the clothes she'd been in when the attack happened, and waited. Checked her phone obsessively, even though there was no signal out here. Paced when sitting became unbearable. Tried not to imagine the worst. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Elena dozed fitfully, jerking awake at every sound. When dawn finally broke through the windows, she was exhausted but couldn't sleep. At 7 in the morning, she heard a car approaching. Elena jumped up, pressing her face to the window. A familiar black sedan was pulling up the long driveway, and when the driver's door opened, Dante stepped out. He was alive. Whole. Covered in blood that probably wasn't his clothes ruined, but alive. Elena ran. She didn't care that Tony and Marcus were watching, didn't care that she was supposed to wait for clearance. She burst out the front door and threw herself at Dante, who caught her and held on like she was the only thing keeping him upright. It's done, he said quietly. The Castellanos are finished. Permanently. How many? Elena asked, not sure she wanted to know. Enough. He pulled back to look at her. Their leadership is gone. The ones who ordered the attack, who sent men to my home, they're not a threat anymore. To anyone. Elena should be horrified. Should be demanding details, asking questions about how many people had died tonight because of her. Instead, she just held him tighter. Maria? She asked. Safe. They'd locked her and 2 of the guards in the cellar. The others. His voice went flat. 3 dead. Another 2 in the hospital. Good men who died protecting you. Guilt crashed over Elena. Dante, I'm so sorry. Don't. His voice was fierce. Don't you dare apologize for someone else's decision to attack. This isn't your fault. It's theirs. And they paid for it. What happens now? Will there be retaliation? No. Dante's certainty was absolute. I made sure everyone in this city understands what happens when they come after my family. There won't be retaliation because there's no one left to retaliate. Family. He'd said family. Elena looked up at him, at this man who just spent the night hunting down everyone who'd threatened her, who'd killed to protect her without hesitation. He was dangerous, violent, everything she should fear, and she'd never felt safer in her life. Take me home, she said. Elena, the mansion might not be secure yet. I don't care. Take me home. She met his eyes. We face this together, remember? All of it. The good and the bad and whatever comes next. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then something in his expression shifted. The last wall crumbling, the final defense falling away. Together, he agreed. Always. They drove back to the mansion as morning light spread across the city, turning everything gold and red. Elena kept her hand on Dante's thigh the entire drive, needing the physical contact to remind herself he was real, alive, here. He drove with one hand, the other covering hers, his grip tight enough to be almost painful. Neither of them spoke. There was too much to say, and no words adequate for any of it. The mansion looked wrong when they pulled up. Broken windows had been boarded up. Police tape fluttered in the breeze near the side entrance. Men in suits, Dante's people, not cops, moved around the property with grim efficiency, cleaning up evidence of the attack. Marco met them at the door, his expression carefully neutral when he saw the blood on Dante's clothes. Boss? Mrs. Russo. We've secured the perimeter, swept for any devices or tracking equipment. Found 3 bugs. Removed them all. The guards' families? Dante asked. Being taken care of. Full benefits plus extra compensation. I handled it personally. Marco glanced at Elena, then back to Dante. Maria's in the kitchen. She's shaken but unhurt. Wants to see Mrs. Russo when you have a moment. Thank you, Marco. Elena touched his arm. For everything you did last night. Something flickered across Marco's hard features. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Just doing my job, ma'am. Inside, the mansion bore more obvious signs of the invasion. Furniture overturned in the foyer, bullet holes in walls that would need patching, blood on the marble floor that someone was currently scrubbing away. Elena felt Dante tense beside her, his jaw tightening as he surveyed the damage to his home. I want this place spotless by tonight, he said to no one in particular. Get contractors in if you have to. I don't want her seeing this. I'm already seeing it, Elena said quietly, and I'm okay. You shouldn't have to see it. His voice was rough. You shouldn't have to live with what happened here. Dante. She turned to face him fully. I'm not made of glass. I won't break because things got scary. Stop trying to protect me from reality. He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Then he nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. Maria appeared from the kitchen, her eyes red and her face pale. When she saw Elena, relief flooded her features. Oh, thank heaven. I was so worried they wouldn't tell me if you'd gotten away. Elena crossed to her and pulled the older woman into a hug. I'm fine. I followed Dante's plan exactly like he showed me. Are you hurt? No, just frightened. Maria pulled back, wiping her eyes. Those men, they came in so fast. Before we knew what was happening, they had guns pointed at us. They locked us in the cellar and said if we made noise, they'd kill us. So we stayed quiet and prayed you'd gotten away. She did. Dante's voice was hard. And the men who did this are dead. All of them. Maria's gaze moved to the blood on his clothes, and she nodded slowly. Good. That's good. She straightened her shoulders, pulling herself together visibly. Well, I imagine you're both hungry. Let me make breakfast. Maria, you don't have to. I need to. She was already moving toward the kitchen. I need to do something normal, please. Elena understood that need. Sometimes the only way to process trauma was to pretend everything was fine until your brain caught up with your body. Okay, thank you. Dante waited until Maria had disappeared, then took Elena's hand. Come on, let's get cleaned up. They went upstairs to his suite, closer than hers, and neither of them wanted to be separated right now. In the bathroom, Dante started to peel off his ruined shirt, then stopped, looking down at himself with an expression Elena couldn't quite read. I'm covered in blood, he said quietly. Their blood. From what I did to them after they came for you. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what I did last night, Elena? He turned to face her. I didn't just kill them. I made them suffer. I made sure they knew exactly why they were dying. I was brutal and merciless, and I felt nothing except satisfaction that they were screaming. Elena stepped closer, reaching up to finish unbuttoning his shirt. Good. They deserved it. You should be afraid of me. I've never been less afraid of you in my life. She pushed the shirt off his shoulders, revealing skin marked with bruises and cuts. You protected me. You kept your promise. Why would I be afraid of that? Dante caught her wrist gently. Because this is who I am, Elena. The violence, the killing. It's not something I do reluctantly. Part of me enjoys it, especially when I'm protecting something He stopped himself. Something you what? He closed his eyes. Something I love. The word hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Elena's breath caught. Say it again, she whispered. Say it looking at me. Dante's eyes opened, dark and intense, and full of everything he'd been trying to hold back. I love you. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. And last night, when I thought they might have taken you, might have hurt you, his voice cracked. I've never been that scared in my life. Never felt that kind of rage. If they'd killed you, I would have burned this entire city to the ground. Elena's eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. I love you too. And before you tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't, why it's dangerous or foolish or any of that, I don't care. I stopped caring about safe the day you kissed me in the library." Dante made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Then he was kissing her again, harder than before, all the fear and fury and relief of the past 12 hours pouring into it. Elena kissed him back just as fiercely, her hands tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still covered in blood." "Then let's fix that." Elena turned on the shower, adjusting the temperature. Together, she saw the moment he understood what she was offering. Heat flared in his eyes, but also hesitation. "Elena, you've been through a traumatic experience. I don't want you to feel like—" "Dante," she started unbuttoning her own shirt. "I know what I want, and what I want is you, all of you. No more distance, no more holding back. If we're doing this, we're doing it completely." His control finally snapped. He pulled her to him, kissing her desperately while his hands worked at the rest of her clothes. She did the same, and within moments they were both bare, stepping into the shower together. The water ran red at first, washing away the evidence of violence. Dante was careful with her, his touches gentle despite the hunger in his eyes. Elena traced the scars on his body, old wounds from a life of violence, and felt something fierce and possessive rise in her chest. He was hers now, completely and absolutely hers. What happened next was neither perfect nor awkward. It was real and messy and beautiful in its honesty. They came together like two people who'd been holding themselves back for too long, all restraint finally abandoned. And when it was over, when they were tangled together under the spray of water that had finally run clear, Elena felt something settle in her chest, like she'd finally found the place she was meant to be. "No regrets?" Dante asked, his voice rough against her ear. "None." She kissed his shoulder. "You?" "Not even close." He pulled back to look at her, water streaming over both of them. "But Elena, this changes things, makes the target on your back even bigger. Are you sure you're ready for that?" "The target's already there. At least now I know it's worth protecting." She cupped his face. "We face it together, remember? Whatever comes next." "Together." He kissed her again, softer this time. "Always." They eventually made it downstairs, both clean and wearing comfortable clothes, to find Maria had prepared enough food to feed an army. She took one look at them, at the way they stood close together, the way Dante's hand rested possessively on Elena's lower back, and smiled. "It's about time," was all she said. Over breakfast, Marco appeared with updates. The Castellano properties have been divided up among the other families as reparations for the instability they caused. No one's contesting it. Everyone saw what happened to them and wants no part of that heat. "Good." Dante's tone was businesslike, but his hand found Elena's under the table. "What about city officials? Any blowback?" Judge Walsh made some noise about investigations, but Councilman Rodriguez shut her down. Said it was clearly self-defense given the home invasion. "You're clean." "For now." "For now," Marco agreed. He glanced at Elena. "Mrs. Russo, I owe you an apology. I said you were a vulnerability. I was wrong. The way you handled yourself last night, escaping, getting to the safe house, keeping your head, that took serious guts." Elena felt herself flush. "I just followed the plan Dante showed me." "A lot of people would have frozen. You didn't." Marco stood. "You're good for him. Makes him more careful, more strategic. That's valuable in this business." After Marco left, Elena turned to Dante. "He's right, you know, about me making you more careful. Is that a bad thing?" "No, but it means you can't go rushing into danger trying to protect me. We protect each other now. Deal." He kissed her temple. "Though I reserve the right to be occasionally overprotective when people literally invade our home." "That seems fair." They spent the rest of the day putting the house back together, literally and figuratively. Contractors came and went, repairing damage. New security measures were installed, even more extensive than before. Elena went through each room with Maria, making sure everything was back in its place, erasing the evidence of violation as much as possible. By evening, the mansion looked almost normal again. Only someone who knew what to look for would notice the patches in the walls, the new windows, the upgraded locks. Dante found Elena in the library as the sun was setting, reading in her favorite chair. He settled into his chair across from her, and they sat in comfortable silence for a while, just existing together. "I've been thinking," he said eventually, "about what comes next, for us." Elena set down her book. "And? This life, what I do, the world I operate in, it's always going to be dangerous. There will always be threats, people trying to take what's mine. I can't promise you safety or normalcy. I'm not asking for that. I know, but I want to give you something." He leaned forward, his expression serious. "A real choice. If you want out, if you want an annulment and a new life, somewhere far from here with enough money to never worry again, I'll arrange it. No questions, no judgment. You fulfilled your part of the bargain, and then some." Elena's heart squeezed. "You'd let me go? Just like that?" "It would kill me." His voice was raw. "But yes. Because I love you enough to want you happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me." She stood, crossing to his chair and settling herself in his lap. His arms came around her immediately, holding her close. "You're an idiot," she said affectionately. "I'm not going anywhere." "Elena, I mean it. You think I survived last night just to leave you? You think I fell in love with you by accident?" She kissed him softly. "I choose this. I choose you. The danger, the violence, the impossible life, all of it, because you're worth it." Dante's arms tightened around her. "You're sure?" "Completely." She settled her head against his shoulder. "Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't destroy the entire city every time someone looks at me wrong." He laughed, the sound surprised and genuine. "That's probably true." They sat like that for a long time, watching the sun set through the library windows. Eventually, Dante spoke again. "I've made some decisions about the business." "Oh?" "I'm moving more operations legitimate. The Port Authority contract I was working on, I pushed it through today. Within a year, 70% of my income will be from legal sources. The rest," he shrugged. "Some things can't be legitimized, but I can minimize them." Elena pulled back to look at him. "Why? Is this because of me?" "Partially, but also because I'm tired." He touched her face gently. "I've spent 20 years building this empire, and for what? To have enemies trying to kill me every other week? To never sleep soundly because I'm watching for threats? That's not sustainable. And now that I have something worth protecting, someone worth protecting, I want to actually be able to enjoy it. What about the other families? Will they let you step back?" "They don't have a choice. I've consolidated enough power that I can dictate terms now. And after what happened to the Castellanos, no one's going to push back." His smile was grim. "Fear is an excellent negotiating tool." "So what does that mean for us, practically?" "It means fewer late-night emergencies. More time together. Eventually, maybe even a normal life." He hesitated. "And maybe someday a family, if that's something you'd want." Elena's breath caught. "Kids?" "Not right away. Not while things are still settling, but eventually, yes, if you want them." He looked almost vulnerable. "I never thought I'd want that. Never thought I'd have someone I'd want to build that kind of life with. But with you, yes." Elena kissed him firmly. "Yes to all of it. The legitimacy, the normal life, the family. Yes." Relief flooded his features. "Okay, good. That's good." They had dinner on the terrace, just the two of them, Maria having taken the night off after her ordeal. Dante cooked, badly, burning the steaks and oversalting the vegetables, but Elena ate every bite because the effort mattered more than the result. "I'm never letting you cook again," she teased. "That's probably wise." He refilled her wine glass. "Though in my defense, I've had people to do this for me my entire adult life." "Well, now you have me, and I actually know how to cook, so we won't starve." Small mercies. After dinner, they stood at the terrace railing, looking out over the grounds. New security lights illuminated the perimeter, making the darkness beyond seem absolute by comparison. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked. "The path you took, the choices you made." Dante was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes. Usually when I'm tallying up the cost, the people I've lost, The relationships I've sacrificed, the parts of myself I've killed to survive. He pulled her closer. But then I think about where I'd be if I'd made different choices. Probably dead in a gutter somewhere. And I definitely wouldn't have you. So no, I don't regret it. Even after last night? Especially after last night. He turned her to face him. Because last night proved that I built something worth defending. That I have people who are loyal, security that works, and a wife who's brave enough to run instead of freeze. That's more than most people in my position can say. Elena thought about that. About the strange life she'd stumbled into, the dangerous man she'd fallen in love with, the person she was becoming in response to both. A month ago, she'd been invisible, powerless. Now she was learning to navigate a world of violence and power, finding her place in it. I'm different now, she said, than I was before. Is that bad? Different how? Stronger, less afraid. She met his gaze, more willing to accept that some things require violence to protect. That's not how I was raised to think. No one's raised to think that way. It's something you learn when you need to survive. Dante's expression was serious. But Elena, you're still you, still kind, still compassionate. You just have sharper edges now. That's not a bad thing. It's evolution. You sure? Because sometimes I think about what happened, about them dying because of me, and I don't feel guilty enough. Shouldn't I feel worse? They made their choices. They knew the risks and came anyway. Their deaths aren't on your conscience. He kissed her forehead. But if you do start feeling guilty, we'll deal with it, together. That's what partners do. Together, Elena echoed, the word feeling like a promise. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. The city settled into new power structures with Dante at the apex and no one willing to challenge him. Contractors finished repairs on the mansion. Elena's things were fully integrated into the house until it was impossible to tell which spaces had been his and which were hers. Everything was theirs now. She met with the families of the guards who'd died protecting her, attending funerals and making sure their widows knew they'd be taken care of. It was hard, facing the cost of her safety in such concrete terms. But it was necessary. These people had sacrificed for her. The least she could do was acknowledge it. Dante kept his promise about legitimizing operations. Elena sat in on meetings sometimes, watching him negotiate with city officials and business partners. He was brilliant at it, strategic and ruthless and somehow charming when he needed to be. Slowly, the Russo name became associated with legitimate power instead of just criminal enterprise. They fell into routines. Morning coffee together, lunch on the terrace when weather permitted, evenings in the library, or watching movies in the media room Dante had built on the third floor. They learned each other's rhythms, preferences, the small intimacies that built a real marriage. The physical side of their relationship was equally revelatory. Dante was careful with her at first, afraid of pushing too hard. But Elena learned to demand what she wanted, and he learned to trust that she wouldn't break. They found a balance between tenderness and passion, control and surrender. 3 weeks after the attack, Elena woke to find Dante already dressed, standing at the bedroom window. "Everything okay?" she asked, sitting up. "Fine. Just thinking." He turned to face her. "I have a meeting this afternoon. With Vincent Marconi." Elena tensed. "Why?" "Because he's been running his mouth again. Nothing directly threatening, but enough that people are starting to wonder if I've gotten soft. I need to remind him why that's a bad assumption." "Are you going to hurt him?" "Only if I have to." Dante crossed to the bed, sitting beside her. "But I wanted you to know. No more secrets between us, right?" "Right." Elena took his hand. "Be careful." "Always am." He returned that evening in a good mood, which Elena took as a positive sign. "Vincent and I came to an understanding," was all he'd say about it. "He won't be a problem anymore." Elena decided she didn't need more details than that. A month passed, then 2. Life settled into something resembling normalcy, or at least the closest approximation their lives would allow. Elena started volunteering at a children's literacy program, something safe that Dante approved and that gave her purpose beyond being Mrs. Russo. She even convinced him to donate money for a new library wing, which earned them both positive press coverage. "Look at you," Dante teased, reading the newspaper article. "Philanthropist, society wife, What's next, charity galas? Don't even joke. I'll make you attend them. I know, that's what scares me. They were happy. Genuinely, surprisingly happy. The kind of happiness Elena had never expected to find in an arranged marriage to a crime lord. 3 months after the attack, Dante came home early with a strange expression on his face. Elena looked up from her book, immediately alert. What happened? Nothing bad. He sat beside her, taking her hands. Judge Walsh resigned today. Effective immediately, she's moving out of state. Elena blinked. Why? Because I had a conversation with her about how holding grudges against people who've done nothing to you personally is unwise, about how her son's problems were his own making, not mine, about how continuing to make my life difficult would result in me making hers significantly worse. Dante. I didn't threaten her. His tone was firm. I just made the situation very clear, and she made the smart choice. Elena should probably object to the implied intimidation. Instead, she found herself asking, is she really going to leave? Her house is already on the market. She's taking a position with a law firm in another state. She'll be gone within the month. He studied her face. You think I went too far? I think you protected us. Again. Elena leaned in to kiss him. Thank you. You're welcome. Though I'm starting to think my protective instincts are creating a pattern. A good pattern. Maybe. He pulled her into his lap, settling her against his chest. How do you feel about a vacation, somewhere tropical, just us, for a week? No business, no security concerns, just beach and sun and nothing to do. That sounds perfect. Elena nestled closer. When? Next month. I'm clearing my schedule. We'll go somewhere remote, private island, probably. I want you all to myself for a while. They did exactly that. The island was beautiful. White sand beaches, crystal water, a villa with windows that opened to the ocean breeze. Dante relaxed in a way Elena had never seen, his usual tension melting away until he looked years younger. They spent lazy days swimming and reading and making love in the afternoon heat. Dante taught her to fish, which she was terrible at but enjoyed anyway. Elena convinced him to try snorkeling, which he grudgingly admitted was interesting. On their last night, they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Dante's arm around her shoulders. I could get used to this, he said quietly. The peace, the normalcy. You still can. This doesn't have to be temporary. I know. He kissed her temple. And I'm working toward it. But it's a process. Dismantling an empire takes time. I'm not going anywhere. Take all the time you need. When they returned home, Elena found she'd missed the mansion. It was strange considering how she'd felt about it initially, but it had become home. Their fortress. Their sanctuary. The place where they'd built something real out of a transaction. Life continued. Dante kept legitimizing operations. Elena kept working with her literacy program, even started teaching a class herself. They attended the occasional gala or charity event, presenting a united front that no one questioned anymore. 6 months after their wedding, Dante came home with papers and a satisfied expression. It's done. As of today, 80% of my income is from legitimate sources. The rest is passive, old investments that are too complicated to untangle but aren't actively illegal. I'm out. Elena threw her arms around him. Really? You're really done with the criminal side? Really done. I'm just a businessman now. A very wealthy, very well-connected businessman with a violent past, but still legitimate. He spun her around. We can have that normal life you wanted. I never said I wanted normal. I said I wanted you. Well, now you get both. That night they celebrated with champagne and the kind of joy that comes from surviving something difficult and coming out stronger. Dante was more relaxed than Elena had ever seen him. The weight he'd been carrying for years finally lifted. What do we do now? She asked, curled up against him in bed later. Anything we want. He stroked her hair. Travel. Build legitimate businesses. Maybe start that family we talked about. Elena's heart skipped. You still want that? More than ever. He rolled to face her. I want kids with you, Elena. Want to build something that lasts beyond violence and power. Want to create a legacy that's about more than fear. When? Whenever you're ready. There's no rush. Elena thought about it. Thought about raising children in this mansion, teaching them to be strong and kind and strategic. Thought about watching Dante be a father, fierce and protective and surprisingly gentle. Soon, she said. Let's do it soon. Dante's smile was brilliant. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him. We survived everything else. We can handle this too. Together. Always together. A year after their wedding, Elena stood in the cathedral where she'd married Dante. Not for another ceremony, but for a charity event she'd organized. The space was filled with children from her literacy program, reading aloud to an audience of donors and supporters. Dante stood beside her, watching with an expression of quiet pride. His hand rested on her lower back, a gesture that had become automatic, comfortable. You did good, he murmured. This is going to help a lot of kids. We did good, she corrected. Your donation made it possible. Our donation. He pulled her closer. We're a unit now, remember? Elena looked around at the cathedral, the same space where she'd walked down the aisle thinking she was being sacrificed, where she'd met Dante's eyes and seen something unexpected beneath his power, where everything had started. Do you ever think about that day? She asked. Our wedding? All the time. Dante's voice was soft. I remember thinking you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, and the most terrified. I wanted to tell you it would be okay, that I wasn't the monster you'd been told about. But I couldn't, not then. When did you know that this would work? The dinner party, when you stood up to Judge Walsh and defended me without hesitation, that's when I knew you were stronger than anyone gave you credit for. He turned her to face him. When did you know? The library, when you kissed me and everything else fell away. Elena smiled. Though I think part of me knew from the beginning, when you promised you wouldn't hurt me. I believed you then, even when I shouldn't have. Your instincts were good. They were. I chose you, and I'd choose you again, every time. Dante kissed her, not caring that they were in public, that people were watching. I love you, Elena Russo, more than I ever thought I could love anyone. I love you too. They stayed for the rest of the event, mingling with donors and watching children perform. When it was over, they drove home through the city that had become theirs, not through fear and violence, but through strategy and legitimate power. The mansion waited for them, lit up against the evening sky. Guards still patrolled the perimeter. Some things never changed, but the atmosphere was different now. Less fortress, more home. Inside, Maria had dinner waiting. They ate together, talking about the event and plans for the week ahead. Normal domestic conversation. The kind Elena had dreamed of but never expected to have. After dinner, Dante led her to his office. Their office now, since Elena had taken over managing the legitimate businesses. He pulled out a folder and handed it to her. What's this? She asked, opening it. Paperwork. For a foundation I want to start, using some of the money from liquidating my criminal assets. It'll focus on supporting families who've lost breadwinners to violence, education funds for the kids, job training for the widows, that sort of thing. Elena looked up at him, tears stinging her eyes. Dante, this is amazing. I can't undo the damage I've done. Can't bring back the people I've killed or hurt, but I can try to make something good come from it. He took her hands. I want our legacy to be more than just survival. I want it to be about building something better. We will. Elena kissed him, tasting salt from tears she didn't remember shedding. We already are. That night, lying in bed with Dante's arms around her, Elena thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a terrified girl walking down an aisle to a woman who'd found her strength in the most unexpected place. From a forced marriage to a partnership that had been tested by fire and come out stronger. She'd been sold to save her father's debts. Had married a man she feared and didn't know. Had every reason to expect a life of misery and control. Instead, she'd found love, power, purpose, a place where she mattered, not despite the danger, but because of it, because someone had seen her worth and fought to protect it with everything he had. The king no longer stood alone, and the woman who'd once walked in fear now stood beside him, unshaken, crowned by her own will. They'd built something real from a transaction, something lasting from something temporary. And whatever came next, whatever challenges or threats or changes, they'd face it together. always together. Elena fell asleep with Dante's heartbeat steady beneath her ear, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be, that she'd finally found home in the last place she'd ever expected to look, in the arms of the man who'd bought her freedom by making her his wife, and then given her something far more valuable. He'd given her a choice, and she'd chosen him. Every single day, she chose him. And that, Elena thought, as sleep claimed her, was the greatest gift of all.